Welcome to today's exploration. I'm your host, and I am sitting here with our resident expert to unpack some really fascinating material today.
Hello, everyone. I am so glad to be here for this discussion.
I was thinking before we started, when you break your arm, the medical process is actually strangely comforting.
Comforting. That is a pretty weird way to describe snapping a bone.
I know, but hear me out. The X-ray shows that jagged white line on the dark film, and the doctor just points right at it.
Oh, I see what you mean. They point and say, well, there's the problem.
Exactly. It is entirely binary. It's either broken or it is not. You have this clean, totally visible categorization of exactly what is going wrong in your body.
Right, because we crave that visibility. We want a map with a giant red X that tells us, exactly where the dysfunction lives so we can just apply a mechanical fix.
But when you step out of that physical realm and you start looking at human psychology,
It gets messy.
it gets incredibly messy. Specifically, when we look at why we sabotage the very goals we work so intensely to achieve, that X-ray machine is completely broken.
Yeah, we are looking at a diagnostic landscape that is incredibly murky, to say the least.
And that is exactly the terrain for today's session. We have this collection of documents covering human psychology, self-mastery, subconscious programming, and we're going to use them to figure out why your frantic pursuit of success might actually be the exact thing pushing it away.
It is the paradox of effort. And it is a paradox that creates a tremendous amount of, quiet suffering for high achievers.
So let's frame this around a highly relatable situation for you listening right now. Think about a time when you had this burning goal.
Like launching a business, maybe?
Right, a business you've been sketching out in notebooks for years. Or maybe it is getting radically fit, taking control of your physical health, or just transforming your career path entirely.
And you're doing everything the culture tells you is the right way to do it.
Yes, you're reading all the books. You are consuming endless informational content. You're practicing your daily habits, waking up at 5 in the morning, working relentlessly.
You are just grinding. You are putting in the hours.
You have the spreadsheets completely optimized.
The vision boards are populated. The highlighters are color-coded.
You are executing all the mechanics of success. And despite all this frantic effort, you feel utterly stuck.
You are exhausted.
Completely. And the more you learn, the more anxious you become. It feels as though there is this massive invisible wall stopping your progress.
And you start to wonder if your own mind is secretly working against you.
It is like you are putting your foot all the way down on the gas pedal, but the parking brake is pulled all the way up.
Which creates a massive amount of internal friction. And that friction creates burnout. What is fascinating here in the source material is that the conventional wisdom we are all fed.
Like work harder, study more.
Exactly. Work harder, optimize your routine, consume more data. That advice is often the exact mechanism keeping that parking brake firmly locked in place.
Wait, really? So the tools we are using are making the wall thicker.
The more you push against the wall using those conventional tools, the thicker the wall becomes.
Which brings us to a concept from the documents that honestly completely threw me when I was reviewing this material. It challenges the very foundation of modern self-improvement.
It is a controversial idea for sure.
The idea is that studying and consuming information can actually become a detrimental crutch. And, as someone whose entire job revolves around learning and sharing ideas with you guys, this felt like a personal attack.
I get that. It is a bitter pill to swallow for anyone who is intellectually curious. But if we look at the psychological mechanics of what happens when we hold information, it makes perfect sense.
But break that down for us. What is the paradox there?
Well, there is a paradox to learning. The more you learn, the more you realize you do not know.
Oh, man, that is so true. The horizon just keeps expanding.
Exactly.
You read a book on marketing, and it references like 3 other books on consumer psychology.
Which reference 5 studies on behavioral economics.
Right. And suddenly you feel like you need a PhD just to launch a basic e-commerce store.
And while intellectual humility is generally, a positive trait, in the practical realm of execution, this constantly expanding horizon of ignorance can severely diminish your internal conviction.
Because you feel like you are never actually ready.
Exactly. You start to think, I am not ready to launch this business yet. I haven't mastered SEO, or I cannot start lifting weights until I understand the exact biomechanics of muscle hypertrophy.
And the perfect macronutrient split, right?
Right. And your mind uses what we casually call analysis paralysis, but the material suggests it is actually a highly sophisticated defense mechanism.
A defense mechanism against what exactly? Like against failure?
No, actually, against change.
Against change.
Yes. The brain is basically an energy conservation machine, and it is a predictive machine. It likes the known because the known is safe.
Even if the known is miserable.
Exactly. Even if you hate your job, your brain knows how to survive your job. When you attempt to change your life, you are introducing a massive amount of unpredictability.
So your brain needs a way to stop you from venturing into the unknown.
Right. And if it just made you feel lazy, your conscious mind would fight back and say, no, we have to work, we have a goal.
Oh, I see. So it tricks you.
It tricks you into feeling productive by making you research endlessly. And then it wins. It keeps you safe in your comfort zone while giving you the illusion of forward momentum.
That is brilliant. And honestly terrifying. We literally trick ourselves into feeling productive.
Modern society completely idolizes the constant consumption of information.
We really do. We scroll through endless tutorials, we save hundreds of articles, we listen to advice, and we tell ourselves, I am preparing. I am doing the groundwork.
But you are actually just hiding behind a wall of data. You are buffering. You are waiting for a magical moment of perfect readiness that simply does not exist.
So we are just stalling.
And the material points out a secondary danger here, too. Consuming content endlessly reinforces the frequency of not knowing.
What does that mean? The frequency of not knowing.
If you are always studying, your foundational identity is that of a student who is unready, rather than a practitioner who is capable. You are neurologically wiring yourself to be a perpetual beginner.
Wait, let me push back on this logic for a second. Are these frameworks actually advocating for ignorance?
No, not at all.
Because in my experience, jumping into a business with zero market research or walking into a gym and lifting heavy weights with zero technique, that is just a fast track to bankruptcy or a torn rotator cuff. How is blind conviction better than preparation?
That is the critical distinction. It is not about championing ignorance. It is about recognizing the threshold of diminishing returns.
Okay, so knowing when to stop reading and start doing.
The core argument is not that you should be blind, but that you must prioritize conviction over endless data gathering.
So once you have the basics down,
Once you know enough to act, once you have the fundamental tools required to take the very first step, further consumption just breeds hesitation. It dilutes your belief in your own capability.
conviction is the actual activator of knowledge.
Precisely. You have to trust that you know enough to begin, and that you possess the adaptability to figure the rest out along the way.
Because the brain learns best through doing. Right.
Yes, through active feedback loops in reality, not passive simulation in a textbook. So it is really about recognizing when preparation morphs into procrastination.
That brings us to a really vivid analogy from the research that I absolutely love. It is about how we interpret our own hesitation.
The check engine light.
Yes, the check engine light on your car's dashboard. When that little amber light flicks on, it is a definitive warning.
It means something is mechanically wrong. Pull over.
Right, stop driving, go to a mechanic. And in our minds, we often treat self-doubt, anxiety, and overthinking as our internal check engine light.
We feel the anxiety rise up when we are about to launch the project. We start overanalyzing every detail.
And we interpret that feeling as a negative signal, warning us to stop what we are doing. We assume that if we are overthinking, it means we are on the wrong path.
We assume the physiological arousal of fear is a sign of impending failure or a signal that we lack the necessary competence.
But the text asks a fascinating question here. What if it is actually the exact opposite? What if we are completely misinterpreting the dashboard of our own minds?
This is one of the most brilliant reframes in the psychological material. What if that self-doubt is not a warning that you are doing something wrong, but rather a definitive signal that you are about to do something profoundly right?
That changes everything.
The framework suggests that the old version of yourself, the identity and neurological wiring you have operated under for years, deploys self-doubt precisely because it feels threatened.
It is literally fighting for its life. The ego is trying to survive.
Yes. The old you senses that an imminent transformation is around the corner. It knows that if you take this leap, if you actually start that company or change your physical health, the old, comfortable, stagnant version of you has to face extinction.
The neural pathways associated with your old habits are about to be pruned.
Exactly. So the brain triggers a stress response. It throws up the check engine light of overthinking to scare you back into submission.
So when you feel that paralyzing doubt right before you do something bold, it is not your intuition telling you it is a bad idea.
Not at all.
It is your historical programming throwing a tantrum because it knows it's about to be replaced.
You are feeling the friction of identity shift. If you misinterpret that friction as a sign to stop, you will forever remain trapped in the preparation phase.
So if hoarding facts is just another form of hiding and our own doubt is just a trick of the old ego, how do we actually cross the line from preparing to executing?
How do we break the paralysis?
Right? How do we move forward? The analysis points toward a massive paradigm shift. It requires moving away from an obsession with what we are doing and focusing entirely on who we are being.
This is where we move from behavioral psychology into deeper identity level change.
State of being versus state of doing.
Yes, we tend to focus entirely on actions, the doing part. We try to force ourselves to execute habits, to stick to rigid routines, to grind it out using sheer willpower.
Because that is what we are taught discipline is.
But the clinical observation here is that behavior naturally stems from identity. Motivation is only required when your current state of being is separated from the task you are trying to accomplish.
I want to make sure the mechanics of this are crystal clear for you listening. You are saying that if I have to constantly hype myself up, watch motivational videos, and use massive amounts of willpower to do something,
It is actually a symptom
that my internal identity does not align with that action.
Willpower is a finite resource. It is like a battery. If you identify as someone who is chronically disorganized, you will need a Herculean amount of willpower to clean your house.
Because you are fighting your own self-concept.
Exactly. But if you internally adopt the identity, the state of being of an organized person, cleaning is no longer a chore that requires a motivational battery.
It is just a natural reflection of who you are. Action becomes merely a facilitator of your internal state.
Think about a truly fit person from the example in the sources. They do not wake up at dawn and need to summon a monumental, agonizing effort to go to the gym.
They don't need a motivational speech to choose a nutritious meal over junk food.
It is simply who they are. Their actions effortlessly follow their identity. They aren't doing a workout routine. They are being an athlete.
When you are in the correct state of being, the doing happens with almost zero cognitive friction.
It becomes frictionless because the brain no longer perceives the action as a threat or an anomaly. It perceives it as baseline reality.
And this connects to a broader, highly researched biological mechanism mentioned in the text, right?
The placebo effect. Now, we often dismiss the placebo effect as just a trick of the mind.
They're like, oh, it is just sugar, you just think you feel better.
Right, but psychoneuroimmunology shows us it is a profound demonstration of how belief alters physical reality. When a patient is given a sugar pill and told it is a powerful painkiller, their brain actually produces endogenous opioids.
Wow. It manufactures its own chemical reality based entirely on an internal conviction.
The belief literally changes the biology. The mind possesses such absolute conviction in the doctor and the pill that it dictates a new physical state.
And the authors of these frameworks extrapolate this biological mechanism to our broader behavioral lives.
Yes, just as a sugar pill can alter physical chemistry if the mind has total conviction, your external behavioral reality responds to your internal state of being.
Conviction is the ultimate activator.
If you possess the unshakable internal state of having already succeeded, if you adopt the identity of the person who has achieved the goal, your actions, your confidence, and your interactions with your environment will inevitably align to reflect that state.
There's a metaphor in the research that brings this abstract concept right down to earth. I call it the old pair of shoes mentality.
I love this analogy.
Imagine you desire something intensely. Let's say it is a brand new, incredibly expensive pair of shoes you see in a shop window. You obsess over them.
You think about them constantly.
You feel the lack of them. You scheme about how to save the money to get them. Every time you walk past the store, your heart rate goes up.
The desire is intense and the emotional charge is high precisely because there is a massive perceived distance between you and the object.
You are operating from a state of lack.
Right.
But once you finally buy those shoes, once you achieve that desired state, what happens?
For the first few days, you are thrilled.
But after a month, those shoes become just an old pair of shoes in your closet. You slip them on to go get coffee.
You wear them comfortably, confidently, without a second thought.
You do not obsess over them anymore because they are already yours. They are normalized. They are part of your everyday reality.
And the psychology here suggests that we need to adopt that old pair of shoes mentality before we achieve the goal.
We have to normalize the success internally so that it does not feel like this massive, distant mountain we are desperately trying to climb.
When you treat a goal like it is on a pedestal, you create performance anxiety. You elevate your cortisol. You become frantic.
By adopting the feeling of the wish fulfilled, by wearing the identity like an old pair of shoes, You remove the desperation.
You stop forcing things. You stop gripping the steering wheel so tightly.
And what's fascinating here is the psychological relief that provides.
When you normalize the outcome, your brain stops treating the process like a high-stakes survival situation.
Because it doesn't think you are going to die if you fail.
Exactly. You gain access to higher-order executive functions like creativity, flow, strategic thinking, because your amygdala is no longer screaming that you are in danger.
But how do we actually maintain that powerful, effortless state of being? Because you cannot just float around in a daydream pretending you were a millionaire while your bank account is overdrawn and expect things to magically fix themselves.
No, it requires a tangible foundation.
And that brings us to the evolution of discipline, specifically the ancient concept of temperance.
Temperance is a word that has a massive branding problem in modern culture.
It really does. When I hear temperance, I immediately picture people sitting in bare, unheated rooms, eating unseasoned oatmeal, and just being utterly miserable.
It sounds like a punishment. It sounds like the suppression of all joy.
Right, but that is a common misconception, equating temperance with deprivation.
The philosophical and psychological frameworks we are examining vehemently argue against that view. Temperance is not about punishing yourself. It is about ultimate self-mastery over the physical and emotional self.
It is the realization that true freedom actually demands discipline.
That sounds like a contradiction on the surface, doesn't it?
Yeah, who does freedom demand rules?
Think of it through the lens of impulse control and dopamine baselines. If you cannot govern your own body, your diet, your impulses, your temper, or your screen time, then those external things are governing you.
You are subject to your chemistry, not a sovereign of your mind.
Exactly. The material emphasizes that we must manage these physical and emotional inputs so they do not overpower our higher reasoning.
Because if you are a slave to your cravings, or if your emotional state is completely shattered every time someone criticizes you.
You are not free, no matter how much money or outward success you have achieved.
So it is about keeping the vehicle, your body, and your neurochemistry tuned up so you can actually drive it where you want to go instead of the vehicle hijacking you.
But the mastery they talk about extends far beyond just working hard. We are a culture obsessed with the grind, with doing more.
Temperance also means knowing when to say no, knowing when to hold back. It is about emotional equilibrium.
Yes, and this is where the framework warns heavily against a very specific, highly normalized modern trap.
Perfectionism.
Perfectionism.
Oh, this part is brilliant. The texts literally spell out perfectionism as P-A-R-A-L-Y-S-I-S, paralysis.
The argument is that failing to finish something, or even failing to attempt something because you have impossibly high standards, is not a virtue.
It is just fear disguised as discipline. We tell ourselves, oh, I am just a perfectionist. My standards are just too high to release this work.
But really, we are just terrified of being judged for an imperfect outcome.
It is a vanity metric.
We use perfectionism to shield our ego from critique. If you never launch the product because it is not perfect, then nobody can ever call it a bad product.
You remain safe in your imagination.
But the objective result is the exact same as if you had just been entirely lazy. Nothing gets produced, nothing gets finished.
True discipline, true temperance requires the courage to be imperfect, to put the work out there, to accept the feedback, and to keep moving.
But wait, I have to challenge this based on what some people might be thinking.
Go for it.
How do we find the balance? If I'm a surgeon or an engineer building a bridge, I want perfectionism.
Good point.
How do we push ourselves to our absolute physical and mental limits to achieve great things without crossing the line into toxic obsession and without lowering our standards to the point of mediocrity?
The distinction lies in your attachment to the outcome. The expert response from these historical philosophies is that true temperance is about equilibrium.
So it was not about zero effort.
No, and it is certainly not about lowering your standards. It is about applying intense, passionate effort with a calm, unattached mind.
Unpack that. Intense effort, but unattached.
It is the difference between working passionately because the work aligns with your identity and working out of a desperate, frantic need to prove your worth to the world.
Oh, I see.
Think of a master craftsman. He cares deeply about the quality of the table he's building. He applies immense effort. But if the wood cracks at the last moment, he does not suffer a complete psychological breakdown.
Because his self-worth was not tied to the wood.
Exactly. He assesses the failure, learns from it, and begins again. That is equilibrium.
It is the ability to walk away at the end of the day and be at peace, knowing you gave your absolute best effort without being emotionally destroyed if the immediate result isn't perfect.
It is having the self-control to work incredibly hard, but also the self-control to rest without guilt. It is turning the switch completely on and then completely off.
But here is the catch. This is where the plot thickens for the high achiever. You can have perfect physical discipline,
You can master your schedule. You can wake up at 5 a.m.
eat perfectly, train flawlessly, practice emotional temperance, put your work out there courageously, and yet people still self-sabotage,
They still hit that invisible wall.
which is incredibly frustrating. You optimize every visible metric, you do all the right things on the surface, and it still falls apart right at the finish line.
You get the big interview and you oversleep.
Mm-hmm.
You build a business to $1 million and then make a catastrophic, uncharacteristic error that burns it down.
Why does that happen? Because we are not entirely rational actors. The conversation in the psychological frameworks shifts here to a much deeper, more fundamental level.
The invisible subconscious blocks.
This is where we look beneath the floorboards.
Right. Why do highly disciplined people still fail? The answer is often subconscious programming formed by past emotional intensity and trauma.
Whenever we hear the word trauma, we tend to think of catastrophic life events, wars, major accidents, profound abuse.
But the psychology suggests it can be any experience that generated a massive emotional charge. The little traumas.
Yes. The subconscious mind does not speak in logic, and it does not speak in language. It speaks in emotion and imagery.
It is programmed by emotionally intense experiences. Let's look at the mechanics of the amygdala.
If a past failure, say a humiliating moment in childhood where a teacher mocked you in front of the class, or a toxic relationship generated immense emotional pain, the brain writes a survival rule.
Never let that happen again.
Exactly. The subconscious will then automatically sabotage your future success if it associates that success with a repeat of that original pain.
The analogy of the corridor is a perfect visualization for this. Imagine your desired goal is a door at the end of a long hallway.
Okay, I am picturing it.
You can have all the temperance and discipline in the world. You can put one foot in front of the other and walk toward that goal all day long.
But if there is a massive, invisible obstacle blocking the middle of the hallway,
A subconscious block.
you will never reach the end. You will just keep walking into an invisible wall, bruising yourself, until that block is removed.
And one of the most fascinating examples the clinical observations provide of this invisible obstacle is the fear of success.
We hear about the fear of failure all the time. It is obvious.
But the fear of success is often much more insidious because it is completely counterintuitive.
Because consciously, who would be afraid of succeeding? It sounds ridiculous. Everyone wants more money, better health, stronger relationships.
Consciously, yes, but subconsciously, it makes perfect protective sense.
Imagine a person who grew up in a very tight-knit working-class community where wealth was viewed with suspicion.
Consciously, they want to build a massive tech startup.
But subconsciously, they harbor a deep-seated belief that elevating themselves, becoming wealthy or highly successful, will cause them to alienate their friends and family.
It triggers an evolutionary fear of being cast out of the tribe.
It triggers survivor's guilt.
Exactly. The subconscious mind says, if I achieve this goal, I will be rich, but I'll be alone, abandoned, and rejected by the people I love.
And to the primitive brain, isolation equals death.
So, to protect you from the perceived pain of isolation, it ensures you hit the snooze button.
It makes you procrastinate on the big project. It causes you to pick a fight with your business partner right before the deal closes.
It is not a lack of discipline. It is a highly effective survival mechanism executing its programming perfectly.
Wow, you are literally fighting your own protective mechanisms.
The very system designed to keep you safe is the system keeping you stuck.
So what does this actually mean for us in practical terms? How do we remove these blocks? Because we cannot just politely ask our subconscious to move out of the way. Logic doesn't work on the amygdala.
No, you have to speak its language. The frameworks detail a process of cognitive and emotional reprogramming.
Because the mind was programmed by emotional intensity in the past, you must use your imagination and emotional regulation to unprogram it in the present.
You have to mentally revisit or recreate the underlying beliefs and overwrite them with equally powerful, positive emotional charges.
How does that actually work mechanically?
It utilizes neuroplasticity, neurons that fire together, wire together. If your current neural pathway links success with abandonment, you have to build a new bridge.
It requires visualizing the success not as something that brings isolation, but as something that brings joy, connection, and safety.
And crucially, you cannot just think it, you have to feel it. You have to generate the physiological sensation of gratitude and safety in the present moment while visualizing the future.
When you pair the image of success with an elevated emotion, you begin to overwrite the old code.
You are creating a new historical data set for the brain, using your imagination so the brain stops predicting danger.
What is incredibly powerful about this framework is that it shifts the blame away from a moral failing.
If you are stuck, it is not because you are lazy or lacking willpower. It is just a software glitch in the brain.
Your past does not dictate your future. Your brain's hardware is not permanently fixed.
You are not broken. You are just running outdated software that was trying to protect you.
It is a profound shift from feeling like a helpless victim of your own mind to becoming the active architect of it.
But removing these blocks isn't the final step. It is just clearing the debris.
Clearing the path ultimately brings us face to face with the most vital relationship of all, the foundation upon which everything else must be built.
Which brings us to the ultimate foundation, self-love and equanimity.
Because once the subconscious blocks are gone, once the hallway is clear, you have to build something sustainable on that ground.
The analysis argues something quite radical here. The external world is merely a reflection of your internal relationship with yourself.
Therefore, self-love is the absolute prerequisite for any lasting success or fulfillment.
This is where we move beyond the mechanics of achieving goals and step into the architecture of actual fulfillment. Because you can achieve the goal and still be utterly miserable.
The texts break down self-love into very specific, actionable, and sometimes difficult components.
We culturally water down self-love into bubble baths and spa days. But in this context, it is defined by rigorous internal boundaries.
Self-forgiveness, self-worth, self-praise, self-discipline, and self-respect.
Let's break those down, because they are distinct. Self-forgiveness means letting go of the crippling guilt for past mistakes.
You cannot move forward if you're constantly punishing yourself for who you were 5 years ago.
Self-worth is the baseline belief that you actually deserve the good things you're aiming for, without having to bleed for them.
And self-praise is critical. It is acknowledging your own wins internally instead of waiting for a boss, a partner, or an audience to applaud you.
Self-discipline, as we discussed with Temperance, is having the boundaries to protect your own potential.
And self-respect is not allowing yourself to be treated poorly either by others or, perhaps more importantly, by your own inner critic.
Now look at the mechanics of what happens if you lack these components.
Yeah.
If you do not possess them internally, you will constantly seek them from the outside world.
This is the root of the frantic effort we discussed at the beginning. If you don't have internal self-worth, you will chase wealth just to prove to society that you are valuable.
If you don't have self-praise, you will obsess over social media metrics to feel seen.
You remain a puppet to the external environment. Your emotional baseline is constantly dictated by how the world treats you on any given Tuesday.
And that is an exhausting, terrifying way to live because you have zero control over the external world.
But the material brings up a crucial concept here to combat that vulnerability: detachment.
Now, I have to admit, I struggle with this one.
It is tricky.
If we are supposed to love ourselves, be disciplined, and strive for great things, but simultaneously be completely detached from the outcomes.
Doesn't that just breed apathy?
Yeah, why try to build a business or get fit at all if you truly do not care about the result?
That is the absolute most common pitfall when interpreting this philosophy. People confuse detachment with nihilism. The framework clarifies this brilliantly.
There is a massive fundamental difference in energy between apathy and detachment.
Apathy is giving up because you feel defeated. It is a lack of energy. It is a defense mechanism.
It is saying, I keep failing, so I'm going to pretend nothing matters so I don't get hurt.
Right. Apathy is a very heavy, lethargic, victim mentality feeling.
Detachment, on the other hand, is born from immense strength. Detachment is having such strong internal conviction, such high self-worth and self-love that you no longer need the external result to feel whole.
You are already complete. You do not need the startup to succeed to prove you are smart. You do not need the six-pack to prove you are worthy of love.
You still act, you still build the business, you still train your body, but you act from a place of joy, expression, and sovereign independence, not from a place of desperation or a frantic need to fix a broken sense of self.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. So apathy is, I don't care because I'm defeated. Detachment is, I care about the action, I love the execution, but my internal peace isn't destroyed if the outcome isn't exactly what I pictured.
You are playing the game because you genuinely love the mechanics of the game, not because your self-esteem depends on the final score.
Precisely. And when you operate from that place of detachment, irony of ironies, you almost always perform much better.
You aren't choked by anxiety. Your cortisol isn't spiking. You aren't paralyzed by perfectionism.
You are free to flow, adapt to feedback, and execute with absolute cognitive clarity. You become dangerous, in the best sense of the word, because you have nothing to lose.
So bringing this entire exploration full circle back to you, the listener, let's reflect on that original scenario we started with.
The exhausted, frustrated achiever running frantically on the treadmill of self-improvement.
The individual executing all the mechanics perfectly, doing everything right, but remaining entirely stuck behind an invisible wall.
Based on everything we have unpacked today from these psychological and philosophical frameworks, the ultimate realization is that human potential is not unlocked by agonizing over new techniques.
It is not unlocked by consuming endless data until you feel ready.
It is not unlocked by punishing the body with deprivation or frantically trying to manipulate reality through sheer exhausting force of will.
All of those frantic actions are just symptoms. They are symptoms of an internal state that feels lacking, threatened, and fundamentally unready.
True potential, as these diverse frameworks suggest, is unlocked through a completely different avenue.
It is unlocked through internal temperance, finding that equilibrium where you can apply intense effort with a calm, unattached mind.
It is unlocked by bravely confronting and reprogramming the emotional subconscious blocks that are secretly running the show.
And ultimately, it is unlocked by cultivating a foundation of self-love, finding total, unshakable peace in your own state of being.
It is about changing who you are internally, changing the neurological wiring of your identity, and then simply letting the external world catch up to the new reality.
So, as we wrap up this session, I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over long after you stop listening. Think about that broken X-ray machine we talked about at the very beginning.
The messy, murky, invisible landscape of our inner lives.
You cannot just point to a bone and apply a mechanical fix. You have to look at the entire system. You have to look at the beliefs driving the engine. So if the universe truly operates like a mirror, reflecting your internal state of being back to you,
What reflection are you casting right now?
if you stripped away all your future goals, all your optimized routines, and all your frantic daily actions today, would you be entirely at peace with the person left standing in the quiet?